just relaxed and paying attention.
Well, we're paying some kind of attention here on 21st Century Radio. Welcome back to 21st Century Radio. Yes, indeed, I'm your host, Bob Hieronimus. Our executive producer and research assistant is Laura Cartner. And our engineer is Anita Brockington. Our guest this hour is a very dear friend of mine. You take a guess. His name is Bob Darlington. Yes, you got it. Bob Darlington is going to be our guest this hour. And we'll tell you all about that in just a minute. Are you there, Bob?
I am here, yes.
Did you hear last hour?
Yes, I did. I'm very, I heard some of it. I am very excited to hear such things being discussed these days openly, and I'm a card carrier myself, so. Well,
Dr. Joel Meshulam has to be one of the finest souls I've ever bumped into on 21st Century Radio, that's for sure. And yeah. I'm so glad he had the time to join us. Well, I want to welcome you back to 21st Century Radio. How have you been doing?
I've been doing pretty well. We've been isolated here for a while. But other than that, I mean, everybody's stayed healthy, and, we have a great place to live and a great view of the lake, and we're getting by, we're doing okay. So, I'm kind of like a bit of a hermit myself anyway, so I can spend long periods of time in isolation, so this isn't really a huge ordeal for me. So I know some people who are having a difficult time with it, but so far it hasn't been a huge stressor. I mean, there are other things going on in the world that are that are kind of competing for awfulness right at the moment. But, but other than that, we're doing fine here,
Good going. Now, you hold on there while I tell people who you are.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I need to know that, too.
Yes, it's important for you to remember who you are. Are you sitting up straight?
I'm sitting up pretty darn straight.
Good, all right. All right. Feet flat on the floor, eyes straight ahead, and you're not chewing gum, right?
Not right now. No, I'm drinking coffee.
Okay. Well, I'm drinking tea. Okay.
Oh, well, there you go.
Friends, Robert Darlington. This is one of my best friends in the world. Robert Darlington studied poetry at California State University in Northridge with Robert, I can't pronounce that, is it Deutsch? Deutsch.
Yes.
Who was a close friend of Delmore Schwartz and John Berryman, two of the most accomplished American poets of their time. Darlington's poems have appeared in Poem and the San Francisco Bay Guardian, as well as on numerous internet websites. He has joined us before on 21st Century Radio to talk about his previous books of poetry, including The Passenger and Ether and 23 Haiku. Is that pronounced correctly?
Haiku, yes.
That's okay, good. Now I got a B+ on that one, didn't I? Now, well, we have also talked at length about his work with the critically acclaimed band Translator and his solo work that followed. Tell us a little bit about Translator again, sir.
Well, Translator is a band that was put together by a guy named Steve Barton, and he's a songwriter and a singer-guitarist, and the drummer Dave Sheff. And they brought in an old friend of theirs to play bass named Larry Decker, and they were a trio in Los Angeles in the late 70s. And I was in a band at the time called The Lies, and we had a mutual friend who introduced me to them, and I was just blown away by them as a trio. And I thought, wow, that's a band I would really love to play. That's like my favorite band in the world. I wish I could play with them. And we wound up getting a chance to, we played, we're all like old, huge Beatle fans and everything. And we, at this friend's wedding a few months later, they asked me to, she had rented a club, so there was a stage and a sound system. So The Lies and Translator both played there, and I wound up going up after Translator played and playing Dizzy Miss Lizzy with them, and kind of everybody knew that this was a that I was going to join the band probably after that moment. So anyway, I did wind up joining, and things just took off very quickly. We moved from Los Angeles, which is where I'm originally from, to San Francisco and lived there for 16 years, and we made very early MTV videos, and we're in one of the very first MTV commercials, and made 4 records with Columbia Records, 4 really great albums, a couple with David Kahn, who went on to produce Paul McCartney and Tony Bennett, and I think he produced All I Want for Christmas by Mariah Carey, which became a huge hit song. So he's done very well. He's a good guy too, and a good writer, a good poet, and the composer himself. So we got to work with a lot of really, really great people, and we played with a lot of the great bands at the times, like the Gang of Four and Psychedelic Furs, B-52s.
Oh, the B-52s.
We were really supposed to be like the next big American band. I mean, we had a song called You're Everywhere That I'm Not that they still play at Oriole at Camden Yards. So, in fact, that's the only baseball stadium where they play it. I just happen to live in the city that actually plays us at the baseball park because we were also big baseball fans, and for years we were trying to get our stuff played at the ballpark. And anyway, so Translator still has quite a few fans. We have a Facebook page called Friends and Fans of Translator that a very good friend has tirelessly run for us for many years. Patricia Rodriguez, she's really kind of helped to keep the band alive. We have a ringtone at iTunes, which is great too, because people can actually, hear one of our songs when the phone rings. So, and that was an easy. I don't even know how that happened. I just one day I was looking up to see if the song had gone on to iTunes at all, because it was on a couple of our records, a couple of our CDs, and there it was. So, whoever did that, God bless them. But anyway, Translator continues to be together. It's the original members still, all 4 of us. And, we played about 2 years ago, did some shows in California, and we can still play live. I mean, we still really have a lot of energy when we play, and we still can make some really great music together. I mean, really, who better to make music together than people who have been playing together for decades? So. How
long have you known these guys? 7, 8 years? 10, 12 years?
Oh, God, I've known them over 40 years now.
Maybe you've known them over lifetimes. Have you ever thought about that?
Oh, yeah. My oldest friend, who I grew up with in California, who I'm still friends with, he and I will have known each other 60 years this year.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, we went and saw the Beatles twice when we were, in our early teens, and we were in all our early bands together and kind of grew up as children of the 60s, as much as you could have, probably. So, we just said yes to all of it and embraced it all. So, we, try to keep that, and Translator kind of keeps a lot of that spirit. I mean, we loved a lot of the music of the 60s we grew up with, but we certainly didn't want to regurgitate, just the same thing over and over. So we tried to put a new spin on it for the times, for the early 80s. And I think our music still stands up, time-wise. I don't think it sounds dated at all.
Indeed.
And I just wish more people could hear it because they would appreciate it if they did, I think. So, but that's not a complaint. I had an incredible time doing it, and I've known so many people who wanted to get that far in the music world and make records and stuff like that, like we did. And I'm really the only one who got to do it at that kind of level. So I feel very fortunate and very grateful, And, my life has gone in other directions. If I'd been hugely successful with that, I wouldn't have other important things wouldn't have happened in my life after that. And I probably wouldn't have been writing poetry as much lately. So.
I wanted to ask you a most important question.
Sure.
I'm sure you've never been asked this before.
Mm-hmm.
Do you miss California?
think I was asked that the first day I moved out here. You know, I do. I have family there who I miss a great deal, and old friends there. I mean, I grew up going up and down the coast and through the valleys and the mountains and the whole 9 yards. And California is a wonderful place. I don't miss how crowded it's gotten.
Yeah.
You know, or the constant wildfires and other issues that go on there. But you know, in some way, you're always, you know, where you're from. You know, and then California will always be. You know, I've lived out here in the East Coast now for 23 years, but California is, you know, comfort. You know, when I'm there, even though I haven't lived there in a long time, it's still familiar and comfortable. But I love the East Coast. Translator was actually more popular out here than we were on the West Coast. So we toured a lot out here. We played the 8x10 and the 930 Club and played a lot of clubs in New York and Boston. And so I like the East Coast. I'd always wanted to live out here, and when I got an opportunity to do that, I did. So, you know, I mean, it's great out here. It's got its own things that are, you know, just wonderful. So I've always been kind of home wherever I am, though. You know,
I think that's true about all artists, because many times we're not very wealthy. And,
that's true.
and we live a totally different life than most people do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We work around the clock, and we try to eat as much as we can, because we usually, most artists starve, and that's not a joke.
Yeah,
most people don't.
I always know where the next meal's coming from.
That's right.
I've been a little bit more fortunate over the years as I've gotten older, but when I was younger, yeah, I was definitely the garret, living in the garret with the loaf of bread and the block of cheese and the cheap red wine. You know, but there was also a certain element of glamour to that. You know, I mean, especially.
Well, the women thought it was glamorous. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
sometimes until you handed them the tip at dinner, you know. I mean, until you handed them the bill at dinner. Yeah.
Well, sometimes we had to make them pay for the dinner. I mean, geez whiz.
Oh, yeah.
Since we were they're entertaining them.
Absolutely.
But tonight we're not going to be talking about rock and roll too much or anything.
All right.
But we are going to be talking about your latest book, a book of photography and haiku called The Road Home Narrows. Whoa, what a booklet. This is something else. I did not know you were a photographer.
Oh, yes, yeah. I actually took a couple of the photos on Translator albums. One I took when we were making a video in India, and another one was a triple image that I shot in San Francisco for an EP we did that actually has the Beatles' Cry for a Shadow on it, our version of it. So it was a 3-4 song EP we put out in 1983.
Oh.
So, but yeah, I've taken photos on some of our CDs, and I post a lot of photos at Facebook and at Instagram, you know, kind of public access places like that. And I'm actually planning to come up with put out a photo book of photos that I've taken here where we live by Lake Montebello. But we can discuss that later, getting back to, if we have the time. The Road Home Narrows, that was just kind of an idea I have. I was a big fan when I was, you know, in the 70s of Gordon Parks, the photographer and poet, and he would put these books out that would have photos and poetry in them, and I always thought they were kind of cool, you know. I never really got it to work with my poetry, my more Western-style poetry, but when I started to write haiku, you know, there's kind of a similarity between a haiku and a photograph in that it's a very brief instant that's you try to capture, or at least that sense of the moment happening and how it's affecting you. And so it seemed to work really well. And I put out a haiku book a couple of years ago called 23 Haiku. And
oh, yeah.
And it was really, I really liked that, but I wanted to do something for this next. I wanted to put out a small book of with some of the photos that I'd taken over the years, and also some poetry, some haiku. I'm very happy with how the book turned out. I have a really great designer named Trudy Fisher, who is an old dear friend who is just a fabulous book designer. She's designed all my last four books she's done, and she'll, and together we kind of formed Dragon Turtle Books, which is my own publishing house that I started to release my work and any work that I happen to find by somebody else that I might want to release. So it's basically just a good way to get a Library of Congress number. So, but it's really nice to have one's own publishing house.
I'll say, sure.
And it's not really all that hard to do. So if people are having trouble finding publishers or getting heard, they can start their own publishing company, especially if they have, can go to put something together at Kendall Direct Publishing and with an artist, a designer they know. Fortunately, Trudy has been designing books long before they were done digitally, so she's a very experienced and a phenomenal photographer herself. So she took some of the photos on 2 or 3 of the translator records. So, but anyway, I just really thought the haiku and the photos would work, and I really wanted to dedicate the book to you and so, because you guys have been really great and just wonderful friends over the years, and I felt you needed a book dedicated to you. I'm sure you've had others.
No, really. No, we haven't.
Oh,
no,
okay.
And we're really very proud of this, mainly because of our relationship over a long period of time. And the nice times we had when you come out to our house, you bring your guitar, and we sing on the porch and things of that nature. Just
a moment. I'm on the phone. I can't talk right now. No.
Time for a break? Okay, it's time for a break here, and so you can talk to them, and we'll listen to something else on 21st Century Radio with our guest, Bob Darlington. And the book we're talking about, and I want to talk about the cover of it right away, is The Road Home Narrows, Haiku and Photography.
Hi, this is Tony Butala of the Letterman. I'm proud to be a part of 21st Century Radio with the great Dr. Bob Hieronimus. He's our kind of guy. He loves harmony and music, and so do we.
So angel, be my pillow. By the moonlight I will take you where I sleep. When the moon climbs high, for heaven will be drifting to the place where the dreams are long and deep.
Oh, good going there, Bob. That's you, isn't it, Bob?
That is me, yes.
Oh, I love this song. I have had this ever since you did this around 7 or 8 years ago. I believe.
Yeah, 2012 it was released.
Yeah, and I have it in both my Rolls and Mercedes, and I listened to that album for hours.
Oh, great.
Yes, and it's just so powerful that especially this particular song.
Oh, thank you.
Tell us, wait, what's the name of that song again?
Heaven.
Heaven, right? But
Yeah.
but it's not what you're necessarily saying in the song. Which
No, not necessarily. It was written. I wrote that song a long time ago in the mid 70s when I was in my early 20s, and it's gone through many different incarnations as far as how it sounds and or how I've played it. And I finally had a chance to record it. I did it with a local producer and musician, Jay Robbins, who lives here in Baltimore and was in some bands back in the 90s like Job Box and Government Issue that were popular, and he's got a great recording studio here in Baltimore. And we went in and did that and had a great time doing it. And Steve Barton of Translator, we sent him the files, and he had his friend Robbie Riss record some tracks onto it and guitar tracks for us. And so it was a whole lot of fun to make, and I would really like to be doing it again, but it's just being isolated like this. It's kind of difficult to work with other musicians right now.
Yes, of course.
So, but I mean, we can do things where we record tracks and we send other people the files to then record their tracks and put things together. Translator has done that before. We had a CD called Carriage of Days that we kind of put together that way, and it still has plenty of energy and still sounds very live. And
sure does.
And, it's just there are many ways to do things these days, and if you just kind of deal with what you have to use, then you're going to be okay. If you just kind of get into a headset where, well, I can't do that, then you're not going to. So, so anyway, I'm doing some playing here at home, and I got my guitars and my other instruments, and I got poems to write and photos to take, and so really everything's going pretty well here.
Well, let's go back to the Road Home Narrows.
Oh, the Road Home Narrows.
Yeah. The cover
Mm-hmm.
is very interesting. It looks almost, I can see, is that your little feet?
Those are my Tootsies, yeah.
Yeah, I see your Tootsies. I see them. But you're standing on, it looks like some rocks, but the way this is put together, and especially the back, it seems like it feels like bones.
Oh, that's swell. I hadn't thought of that. I'll have to check it out again. And
so when you put the bones together with the Road Home Narrows, it carries a heavier meaning than I had originally thought. That's what I want you to talk about. From the standpoint, this is an important work for you, and this may be certainly not going to be your last book, right?
Oh, no, I've got two more. I'm getting ready, essentially, to put together a book of nothing but photos of photographs that I've taken here by Lake Montebello. I'm going to do a thing kind of like Hokusai's 36 views of Mount Fuji. It's going to be like, 36 views of Lake Montebello. So, but it's nice. I've got some nice photos, and that's going to be a color photo book, color and black and white. And then I've got another poetry book. I've probably got about another 150 poems to choose, maybe 30 or 40 for another book. So, yeah, that's I definitely have plans for more books. And since I do have my own publishing house, I can, handle everything that I need to pretty much. I haven't been great at getting publicity for these books, so that's currently what I'm trying to figure out. But I've been so busy writing them and publishing them that I've really, not had any time hardly to really try to do any sort of marketing with this to get them out there to libraries or get them to people to read them. But when people do read them, they seem to really enjoy them. So that's really a great feeling. But the cover photo is actually on the pathway right out in front of my house.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a beautiful day here in Baltimore a few months back, and I took the photo, and later it seemed to, to almost kind of be, really be perfect for the haiku that's in the book that's about the road home narrowing, and excuse me, and it's it just seemed to really tie everything together for the book, and treated a great job with the type and the color of the type that she used and everything. So.
And I like the way she designed the edge, the back edge being red. I mean, she really, there's interesting little colors in here.
She picked some really fantastic colors.
Now, is that Trudy who did this?
Yeah, Trudy Fisher. She's a photographer and designer in San Francisco.
Well, I'm holding this up to the microphone now because we've been on the air for about 35 years now, and there's some of the people out there have learned how to be clairvoyant and see things. At least we're told that. So I wanted them to see this.
Oh, okay.
See it? Facebook? No, it's not on Facebook. But you are on Facebook, aren't you?
Oh, I'm on Facebook. Yes.
Let's make sure we get this out there.
Yeah,
they can follow you. They can follow you on Facebook on Robert Darlington.
Yes.
And you said also you can find our archives posted weekly for free. That's me.
Right.
That's not you, right?
Right.
You ever thought we were brothers?
Oh, could be. Not separated at birth, twins.
Yeah. Yes, we like the same kind of things. We do similar kinds of things, and we think the same kind of way for some reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think all artists kind of think in those kind of ways. How long have you said you've been taking photographs for just a few years?
I have been taking photographs for actually quite a long time, probably 40 years. I've known a lot of really excellent photographers, and I've just grew up around excellent photographers, so I've always appreciated photography a great deal, and the ability to really capture something in an image that way. So it's not something I really ever tried to go out of my way to do, but being able to take photographs that wound up on record jackets, things like that. I mean, that was really, I feel very fortunate to have been able to do that because a lot of people really struggle for years to try to get to do something like that. And what I would
have charged you to do your cover?
What's that?
$1,500.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So anytime you want to do the next book, I'll give you a discount.
Give me a deal.
A discount. Yes. Yeah. $5. $5. How's that?
$14.95.
Okay. Well, let's talk about this style of poetry called haiku. What is the form used with haiku?
Well, haiku it's trying to write it in English is always going to present an issue. I prefer to call them haiku-style poems because I've studied Japanese for several years, and it's a syllabic language. In other words, every syllable means something. So, in there are 17 syllables in a traditional haiku. There are 5 in the first line, 7 in the second line, and 5 in the third line. So all 17 of those syllables are capable of holding a great deal of meaning. And in English, often, you need to put together several words to create the kind of meaning you're after. So you use up, if you're trying to write in the traditional form in English, you have to really carefully choose the words, because you don't have as much to work with, so to speak. So I really like writing in the traditional form and the challenge of trying to be very specific with the words. And I think haiku that leave the 5-7-5 form in English don't really quite sound like haiku to me. I'm not saying anybody shouldn't try to experiment or do anything differently, but for me, that personally, I prefer to write it in the traditional manner and just try to use as few words as possible to do so. But there will always be that problem with trying to write haiku in English, that they are just, it's just the difference between the Japanese language and the English language. So what's really great is to learn enough Japanese so that you can read haiku in Japanese and get a chance to read the real masters like Basho and some really great haiku poets. I wasn't really always that interested in haiku. It was really something I never thought that I would want to write or want to do, and I just kind of fell into it. I didn't. I enjoyed reading some of it, but I was really not. It didn't seem like something that I would do myself, and here I have, 2 books of it out now. So it shows you how things can change, and how our perceptions can change. So anyway, it's a wonderful little form of writing. You can say and people really like the haiku too. Sometimes I'll write a Western style poem that I think is really quite marvelous and be quite proud of myself, and then I'll write a little 3-line haiku, and the response will be much greater from people for the haiku.
Wow!
But I think part of that too is just that our attention spans aren't what they used to be too, and I think that if you can put something into a small package that people like that they can read quickly and easily, that's going to be something they might be attracted to. And at this point, I think poets just have to do everything they can to be read, because poetry is not really the central thing in people's lives that it was for a long time. Gradually over the last 100 years, it's really diminished in many ways as an art form. And even great poets, famous poets like Dylan Thomas, and he had to do all kinds of go on speaking tours and do all kinds of stuff just to
survive,
to support himself.
Yeah.
So, around the 1920s, 1930s, poetry started to lose its importance to people, and and poetry became, to me, something more that became a real academic thing, where you had to go to a certain college or a certain university to study with certain people. And I was very fortunate when I studied poetry in the town where I grew up, Northridge. There was a university, and State University, and right in California, and Robert Deutsch was teaching there, and he had gone to Columbia University with Delmore Schwartz and John Berryman, and he had, they'd all written poetry and grown up writing poetry together, and so there was still some contact with that world, back in the 70s when I was in college. But Delmore Schwartz died in the early 60s of, unfortunately he got to be very paranoid, and other mental problems he had. And Berryman had problems too. He felt, underappreciated, and that nobody was reading his books, and he committed suicide shortly before he was supposed to come out and speak to our class. Unfortunately, it would have been wonderful to have met him, and it's just one of those sad things, but a lot of poets, there's a very romanticized, view of death and suicide and all that stuff with many artists, and,
But I like your words.
Oh, well,
hey, are you trying to, Lars, are you trying to tell me we got to take a break? Oh, darn it. It's time out here on the playing field. But when we come back, let's start with Incessantly Still, okay?
Sounds good to me.
Let's check that one out. With our guest, Bob Darlington. The Road Home Narrows, Haiku and Photography in 2019. Follow him on Facebook, Robert Darlington. Find our archives posted weekly for free on YouTube and 21st Century Radio also.
Hi, this is Roseanne Cash, and you're listening to 21st Century Radio with Dr. Bob Hieronimus. I have very seldom enjoyed an interview this much.
Oh, really?
Very seldom.
Well, ditto.
You're leaving me dreaming. My words, they lose on me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I got to hear some more.
We feel the waves still crashing. I know I've fallen over you.
Whoa, isn't that something? That is Brother Bob Darlington. I'm telling you. I'm glad he's my friend. All right, now, the book, of course, we're talking about is The Road Home Narrows. And the first thing, as I said, I wanted to talk about was the first, not the first, it's the second actually, incessantly still. Listen to this, friends. Why don't you read it instead of me?
You know, unfortunately, I don't have the book in front of me. I had to...
Okay, then I'm going to be you. I'm going
You
to
be me.
Yeah, because we're Bob, you know.
That's right.
There's only 32,582,963 Bobs in the world. Did you know that?
That's right.
Yeah, they're all over the
place.
place.
It's a palindrome.
All right. Okay. Incessantly still, hummingbird of memory, sweet nectar of life. What can you tell us about this piece? I'll tell you what I love about it. It reminds me of my daughter because her favorite kind of bird, and she's just like us in the sense of taking care of birds, dogs, horses, pigs, and everybody else, is the hummingbird, and she's working very strongly on helping us out here because she's got a lot of hummingbirds up there in New York.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, up there by...
Yeah,
they're big up there.
Yeah, you get some big hummingbirds up there, extra large.
So what are you saying about here, about hummingbird of memory, sweet nectar of life?
I think it was just from watching a hummingbird, and there's an old line from the novelist Henry Miller. Yeah, he had a book called, that's the title of a book that was called Be Still Like the Hummingbird.
Oh,
and,
the Henry Miller who wrote
Tropic of Cancer.
Tropic of Cancer and everything else?
Yeah, same
He
guy.
was my god when I was, when I was in high school.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I had two gods. One was Henry Miller. And, so go ahead. I'm sorry. But
no, that's okay. No, I like a lot of Henry Miller's stuff is quite great. But
I think I got every one of his books, but I didn't know about the hummingbird one.
Yeah, but I like that image of the be still like the hummingbird, you know, how the hummingbird is just constantly, its wings are going so incredibly fast, but yet the body of the bird itself looks still.
Mm-hmm.
It was just kind of like that, and it was kind of just the moment of seeing it there, and the drinking, you know, the treacle, the nectar, and you know, a lot of haiku is just trying to really capture a moment, you know, trying to capture one of the most famous haikus by Basho is, by the pond an old frog jumps in, splash, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's obviously more interesting than my translation of it there, but you know, it's just really trying to create something like that and trying to find a moment where kind of life and the universe and everything becomes kind of crystal clear, and just seeing the hummingbird kind of hanging there and taking in this sustenance really, I think, inspired the poem. So,
well, that sounds like my daughter. It does. Let's go to another one here.
Sure.
Sit with your lost soul, unimaginably deep, always returning. There's so many different meanings.
Kind of, was I think just the whole thing of just kind of sitting and being quiet, to, especially in these times, and people feeling like the world is out of control and like their lives are out of control. That the way to really get back there is to just kind of stop everything and just be quiet and listen. And it's not always easy, and it doesn't always happen as planned, but sometimes, you can see something deeper in reality and in yourself, I think, if you just can stop and be quiet long enough. We're all so afraid of, we all make noise to fill in the silence, because most of us grew up in a household where we, talked to fill the space, because we never knew if we didn't talk, we didn't know what else would fill the space. And sometimes it could have, not in my case, but it could be abusive, it could be, stuff like that. So it's just kind of a call to return to oneself in silence, and also, whether that's meditating or just being quiet, or just, however anybody does that,
Yeah, we're always returning to another body, maybe, huh?
Yeah, that you could look at that too as maybe a thing with about reincarnation, or it's really just it's just that if you really kind of want it, it will always come back, sort of thing. If you really get to the right place to let it come back, it'll come back. So, because I know a lot of people feel like they've really, trying to have a sense of one's spirit or one's soul or one's life having some greater meaning is really difficult right now. So, and anyway, I think that's where that probably came from.
Well, there's multiple levels of meaning all the time, and that's what I like about your work. And also from the standpoint of, let's see. Oh, Lord. No, there was something there was another one of your poems. I'm going through your book real rapidly because I misplaced one of them after the Sit with Your Lost Soul. Snow falls endlessly. What stays is what fades away. Winter dreams of spring. That feels like now.
Yeah, what stays is what fades away. It kind of sounds like double talk, and maybe to some people it will be, but I think it's just that what really stays with us is the past, is what we lose, right, over time. And, winter dreams of spring, it dreams of return to, to beauty and the sun. I mean, winter can be very beautiful, too. I'm not saying that. But, it's something I don't really probably have to explain, because everybody knows what an incredible transition that is between winter and spring.
Sure.
And how kind of life-affirming that is, and how suddenly there's like a shift in one's psyche and in the world. And so I think that's, in fact, it was interesting, because I think I wrote that a couple of years ago, or maybe it was just last year, right around this, right around March, April. It was in a transitioning period, and it had gotten hot for a while, and then all of a sudden it just, we had like a kind of an unexpected little snowstorm or something, and the poem just came out. A lot of the time it's not something I really, I usually write fairly quickly as far as getting ideas down, so I don't try to edit myself while I'm writing and too much, and I don't drive myself crazy over certain words or punctuation or things that that I've heard a lot of poets have done in the past, and it comes fairly easy to me. So I'm fortunate that way. So a lot of the time I just kind of get ideas down, and then I kind of take them from there. It's the same way I take photographs. I'll take a photo, and then I'll start working with filters and other things that I have to try to get the exact photo out of it, the exact image that I like. Because to me, I'm more interested in creating an image, and I like doing things like Maxfield Parrish, like taking photos and then kind of adding glazing and different types of effects to them to bring out different colors and stuff like he did. So
one of the most important things is for our listeners out there to know how to get a copy of your book. How can they do that?
Oh, it's very easy. You can get one. I publish it through Kindle Direct Publishing, so you can always get one through Amazon. But I think, Barnes & Noble, pretty much any book retailer will have them. You can go into bookstores and order them. All my books are on demand, so because I don't want to be sitting on hundreds of books, and I don't want anybody else to, and I don't want, if there's no demand, I don't want any trees destroyed to be pumping out a bunch of books that nobody's going to buy. So all the books are on demand. You just can order through Amazon. My book, The Passenger, is there, 23, Haiku.
We got to stop. Thank you for joining us, Bob Darlington. The Road Home Narrows, Haiku Photography 2019. Follow him on Facebook, Robert Darlington.
Talk and breaking news on Talk Radio 680 WCBM, Baltimore, and WCBM.com.